Well, hi, and welcome again this week to ATL Home and Market. Um, I'm Ira Miskin. I am broker and team leader with Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty in the Miskin team, along with Stephanie Miskin, co-team
Hello.
leader. And joining us this week is our team advisor, Stephanie Gulley, who is a wonderful expert on a number of topics that we're going to be talking about today, having worked in the investment world and in a variety of different ways, because we're going to dig into today an area of investing in real estate that is what everybody who's thinking about investing needs to think about. If you're thinking about it, you need to think about these things. Where's the right place to go? What is the right type of investment to make? And how do you take those steps to do it? And so we're going to have a little bit of fun today talking about what those three key things are, how to approach them, what you need to be thinking about so that you can use real estate profitably and really have it make sense for you. But before we get started, Stephanie M has some more great things to do and some more interesting and wonderful places to go and visit around Metro Atlanta so that we can have fun while we're thinking about investing in real estate. Stephanie, what do you have this week?
Yep. Okay. So, fall is upon us. Every day it seems like it's getting closer and closer. So I wanted to kind of tap into that a little bit and have some fun things for everybody to do in the fall. So if you've not done it, you need to do it up in Blue Ridge, Georgia, which is not that far from Metro Atlanta. It's probably about an hour and a half to get up to Blue Ridge. There's the Blue Ridge Scenic Railroad. And this is so much fun, and especially in the fall when the leaves are changing and it's just gorgeous to be in the mountains. But it's a 4-hour train ride through the mountains, and you're going to leave from downtown Blue Ridge, and you're going to go for an hour, and you're going to wind through all these quaint towns like McKaysville, Georgia, Copper Hill, Tennessee, and then they're going to stop and they're going to let you off, and you're going to have 2 hours to kind of wander around these towns, which are filled with antique stores and great galleries and all kinds of places to eat, and kill 2 hours. And then you're going to get back on the train, and they're going to take you back through the forest, and you're going to go down back to Blue Ridge. Now, there's multiple kinds of cars that you can ride in. And we did this when our children were little, and I've yet to do it with my grandkids, but I really want to. But there's vintage open air cars, which are great. So I highly recommend the open air cars, but they also have climate controlled cars if you want to get on that. So you pick the kind of car you want when you make your reservations. And I highly recommend that you make your reservations and don't just show up and say you want to get a ticket. It is just lots of fun, and it's a great time to do it. So while you're up there, I said, okay, we're up there. Let's do some more stuff. And there's tons of stuff to do up there in the fall. There's apple picking at the Mercer Orchard. There's waterfall hikes that you can go on. And one of them is called Fall Branch Falls, which is not very far from Blue Ridge. There you can head right over to the Toccoa River, and you can go tubing. It's not that cold, and we're not living in Chicago where it's freezing. So you can go tubing. So you could really make a fun day or two. And while you're up there, you're going to need a place to stay. So that ties in my conversations about the state parks. And Amicalola Falls State Park is 20 minutes from the railroad. And they have all different types of accommodations. They have a beautiful lodge. If you wanted to stay in the lodge, that's available. They have cabins. They have campgrounds. They have glamping. And I've never done that, but it sounds cool. I mean, it's a tent, with king-size beds in it and, all the comforts of home, but you're in a tent, and they have glamping there. And then there's one other thing up there that I think for the real adventurous folks might love. I know that my granddaughter has done it and love it, but they have a zip line canopy tours. So if you're looking for an adrenaline rush in all of this, check that out also. So all of that is up in the Blue Ridge area. And I think that at this time of year, you got, until now, until late October, early November here in Georgia, where you could really enjoy it. But the leaves are really going to start changing within the next couple of weeks. So I would keep that in mind. And I know that in some counties, these kids have fall break already. They've been to school for like 2 weeks and now they have fall break. So you might want to think about doing something like this, going up there for a few days while the kids are off. So that's a lot to take in, but there's a lot to do up there. Now, if you're looking for something to do this weekend, we have the Stone Mountain, we have the Yellow Daisy. I spoke about this the last podcast, but it is coming up. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's a fabulous art show. There are over 400 artists. It's just the gate fee to get into Stone Mountain Park and really enjoy some great art and food and music and all kinds of stuff. And that is this weekend. And now for all of you folks with kids, this is very exciting. The entire month of September, there are all these attractions in Atlanta that kids are free. There's no charge for kids. And I was so excited when I heard about this because I figured, with the fall break coming up and, everything is so expensive right now. So all of these things are free. Now, I'm just going to tell you about some of them, but you can get the Georgia Aquarium. You can get into the Georgia Aquarium and you don't have to pay for your kid. The Lego Discovery Center in Atlanta. Again, you don't have to pay for the kids. The Fernbank Museum of Natural History, free. So what I suggest you do is get online and look for kids free admission in September in Atlanta metropolitan area, and they will have a whole list of things. So that's what I have for this week. I know it's a lot, but there's a lot going on. And, at least 2 of these things are going to, you can keep yourself busy all of September. And the first one, forever, into the winter time. So that's what I have.
Pretty excellent.
Yeah.
Have you been to the apple orchards in Blue Ridge? Have you been to the apple orchards in Blue Ridge?
I have not been to those. I've been to other apple orchards. Have you been there?
Yes. Yeah. There's a ton of them. Mercer, or the one that you mentioned, BJ Reese's, is a really good one. I think they have like a pig race or something at that one. But that one's like, they're both so much fun, and the apples are chef's kiss. They're so good.
We went to one I think we went to one on the south side down towards McDonough. We were in that area and we went to one down there. I know, they're delicious. I mean, you come home with all these apples and you're like, okay, now what?
Half of them rot and half of them get eaten in my house.
I learned how to make apple crisps.
Ooh.
So I wouldn't let them go to waste.
Yeah, there's apple orchards, but there's also peaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And strawberries. Yes. Yeah. All those things. So all of you who live in the concrete center of Atlanta, and the closest thing you have to being in the wilderness is that there might be a tree planted in front of the building that you live in. Get in your car and go north up to the foothills of the mountains.
Beautiful.
Or go south down towards McDonough, and get out there and bring your bags and your baskets and pick the fruit that you would pay 5 times as much for in the supermarket, and bring it home and just have a good time and have a good old meal.
And the nice thing about Georgia and Atlanta is it doesn't take that long to get out of the city and get into the country. I mean, we
Mhm.
both we lived in Atlanta. I mean, we lived in Chicago and New York City, and but it would take hours to just get out of the city before you even got anywhere near the country. I mean, you can be from downtown Atlanta, Blue Ridge, in under 2 hours easily.
Mhm. Yep.
So that's what's so nice about living here, among other things.
Among other things, you know, living in the South is both unique and wonderful, frankly. Um, and if you live in the right spots, it very rarely snows.
No, I know, right? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
it's all good, which is all good. And so that takes us to thinking about buying real estate because when you live in the North, not only do you have to take care of the properties that you bought as investment properties for people to live in, but you've got to take care of the environment in ways that are really a great deal more work than here in the South. And it's much more pleasant in the way in which we're able to own properties here. And frankly, because we're not, as in many big urban centers, like in New York or Chicago or Los Angeles or in Denver, cities like that, where they have very high tax structures that are not taxes that are beneficial to the homeowner in Georgia and therefore in Metro Atlanta. The tax structure and the ability to be able to use it as a way of enhancing the profitability of the real estate that you own is a really, really good element in being able to have over time a profitable investment in real estate. Because basically it's leverage. Um, you know, Stephanie, um, really, how many different ways can you actually go out there to invest in anything where essentially you're using other people's money? You have a little bit of seed money to get started, and you borrow money from the bank, and the next thing you know, you've got a building that is paying you income.
Mhm.
Pretty interesting way of being able to do it. Try buying stock on the stock market that way,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
And you're building equity with all of this. I mean, every time you buy a property, you're building equity.
Yeah. And everybody needs a home. Everybody needs a place to live.
Right.
So it's a hot commodity, honestly, and you can leverage it different ways to work for you. Being passive income, and with Atlanta specifically, there's so many things dragging or making people move into this area. The film industry, and with the Tyler Perry studios and all of that, and
Yeah,
healthcare, all of that. It's just growing.
absolutely.
I was talking to somebody that was interested in having us market and sell their home for them. They were moving, they had retired and they were moving further south to be closer to grandchildren. And they have a terrific home in
Like Arrowhead.
Lake Arrowhead. Thank you. I was going to say Lake Alatoona and Lake Arrowhead, which
Like
is
Arrowhead. It's a great community.
and um, in a community like that, where there are a lot of people that live full time, like this couple did, but there are an awful lot of people who use the properties up there in a whole bunch of different ways. It's like,
Yeah.
and Stephanie, you've been talking recently to a number of investors that are looking for properties. Some of them are fix and flip and so on.
Mhm.
But when you go into some place like Lake Arrowhead, you can turn them into weekend rentals. You can turn
Yes.
them into month-to-month rentals, and you can turn them into Airbnbs, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
what are some of the things that are different about the three different approaches, Stephanie? That when you're working with an investor buyer, you talk with them about to see really where their head is at with respect to what would be the best way for them to invest.
I typically, kind of get a feel for the investor and what they specifically like, because you can have different types of, and I'll just speak on like the short term investment side of things. So like Airbnbs, VRBO, and stuff like that. If somebody is looking for a property to specifically have to cater to, weekend or week rentals, what do they like? Do they like, being in the mountains, or do they want to be at the lake? Because I feel like that'll kind of determine which way, they utilize their property. Do they really want something that, they can escape to themselves over, one weekend or a week, and go and stay in their property that they own, that they get the benefits of renting it out, in other times of the year. So I like to just kind of get a feel for, what are you, a mountains person, or are you like a lake person, or, do you want both,
And that speaks to what type of investment property you want to buy. And there's, different strategies for different types of properties. So let's start off digging into a little bit the long-term ownership type of property, which would be a property that an investor would buy and would turn into a rental property.
Mhm.
What are the attributes of that? What are the pluses and minuses of that kind of thing? And I think both of you guys have worked in those areas with investors, so you might both want to jump in. But what are the pluses of that, buy and hold long-term investment property?
Oh, the nice thing
Well, I
about
mean,
that, oh, you want, I'll go this time. The nice thing about a long-term rental is, you get somebody in and it's fairly stable and you don't have to worry about finding a new tenant. Sometimes people rent for years. The one thing and if you're looking, families, especially families that, they can't afford to buy, they want to be in a good school district, they want to be in a safe neighborhood. So if you find yourself a property that fits that criteria, which we have done, we have had rentals in the Lassiter High School district because the school was great, the neighborhood was safe. It was a fix and flip, but we didn't flip it. We bought it at a great price. We fixed it and we turned it into a rental property that had
Mhm.
renters in it for many, many, many years. So that's, less management, I would say too. You have an Airbnb or you have a short-term rental, you're managing it more.
Mhm.
So plus side then, more steady income,
Yeah.
valued to be able to hold the property longer, which means that the property is building equity,
Correct.
right? So, so Stephanie, talk a little bit about you don't buy it and sell it in a year, but you buy it and you may hold it for 20 years because of
Mhm.
the different elements of the value of the property. How does that work?
Which
Which
Stephanie?
Stephanie?
Try Stephanie G.
Oh gosh, I forgot your question.
The question is, what are the big pluses of those long-term ownership of properties? What is it that you get out of it? Yes, you get a monthly rent, but there are also other advantages. What are those advantages?
Um, oh gosh, I feel like I'm in an interview. I mean, really the biggest thing is just the passive income, and the appreciation that happens
Right.
over the years. And another advantage is, every year market rent typically goes up a certain percentage. So you may be at, X amount of dollars, charging your tenant for however long, but in the lease, you can put, rent will be increased on X amount percentage of basis. So you're not staying, at an early 2000s rent when it's 2025. Like you can, continuously, up the rent incrementally to stay with the market.
But your costs for managing the property and your mortgage does not go up.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Unless you refinance or, whatever you decide to do with the property. But typically people will just buy rentals, hold on to it, and have a tenant essentially pay their mortgage and, put some money in the investor's pocket. for long-term expenses, short-term expenses, whatever the case is.
And the tax benefits of it help lower your tax base
For
so
sure.
that you end up having more cash to be able to work with. And,
Mhm.
you say, okay, let's say 13 to 20 years, we're going to turn over our investment properties. You buy a property today for $500,000, and 20 years from now, just in the normal appreciation of properties, which averages annually like 3 to 4% a year,
Mm.
you go out 20 years from now, and that property
Mhm.
is appreciated by somewhere between 70 and 100%.
Right.
So then you go ring, and you call up Stephanie G, and you say, so I have this property. It was a rental property, and we gave it a bath, and it looks pretty good, and we'd like to sell it. And
Right.
you sell it for them for $1 million.
Mhm.
That's a big part of the value of the buy and hold strategy
Mhm.
for properties,
Absolutely.
right? That has a downside, right? I
Oh,
mean, what are the downsides?
well, I mean, the 2 a.m. my HVAC is out or my air is out and it's 100 degrees outside in a heat wave.
Uh-huh.
Those are definitely disadvantages. The property management, tenants, the repairs that will be needed. Vacancies is a big one, because people typically buy rental properties to have somebody occupying that property. It kind of depends on it being occupied.
Mhm.
So when there's vacancies, they're having to come sometimes out of pocket or pull into their reserves just to cover the vacancy for however long it's been vacant.
But there's a remedy for that. And that remedy is hiring a good rental management company,
Absolutely.
right? They help keep the property rented, and they also get those 2 a.m. calls,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Um, and then, as part of what the rental management company is paid, there's money that's kept aside so that, if the toilet stops flushing or the refrigerator stops working or
Mhm.
all of those are part of your accounting, that that you have money set aside, you have home warranties in place so that um, uh, yes, there are issues, but they're only big issues if you're doing a lot of other things in your life and you also choose to be the property manager.
Mhm.
That just all gets built into the cost of it. But at the end of the day, and this is a really good point, I think, that Stephanie made, and it works differently in communities, and how certainly communities mature. That you bought a house in 2000, and the rent for that nice 4-bedroom, 2-bath house was $800 a month, and your mortgage and your interest and your taxes was $650 a month.
Mhm.
And you paid $100 a month to the rental management company, and you had $50 profit. Not much profit, right? However, now you've held the property for 10 years and
Mhm.
the rent is $1,600 a month. Your costs for maintaining the property haven't appreciated that much. There's been no change in what you're paying in your mortgage.
Right.
And so now your profit on a monthly basis on that property, instead of being $50 a month, is $600 a month.
Yep.
Hmm. Do that month in and month out, and do that 20 times.
You'd
That's
be sitting
20.
pretty.
Yeah.
Now you're
Right.
pretty, okay. Now you've got, in addition to all the equity you're building, is $18,000 or $20,000 a month of income
Mhm.
from those properties. And that's a pretty interesting thing to be thinking about. And it's why, when you're thinking about buying investment property, you need to look at the pluses and the minuses of the buy and hold long-term property investment,
Mhm.
because yes, it takes more specific work. And yes, it takes additional assistance. But at the end of the day, you have those two big elements, which is a greater amount of month to month income and the
Mhm.
equity that you accrue.
Yep.
Now, short term rentals and Airbnbs, they have some of the same attributes because you can buy, a property that you want to keep as an Airbnb, and you can keep that property for 20 years. And so it appreciates. So that element is there. But guys, talk about the difference, the big difference between long-term rental and short-term rental, and the pluses and minuses of those.
Well, I think the big difference is if you're buying an Airbnb, people use Airbnbs when they're on vacation or they're traveling for business. So there's a different set of criteria that you have to look at when you purchase the property. So they're not looking, they don't care what the school district is. They want to be, either in a place like Lake Arrowhead where there's all kinds of fun things to do because they're going on vacation, or they want to be at the lake. They want to be on Lake Lanier because they want to enjoy the lake. So it's vacation mentality, or it's short-term business mentality. Like Stephanie was saying, with Tyler Perry, a lot of people are in and out of Atlanta, but they don't want to stay in a hotel, but they want to be close to the studio and where the work is. So those are the kind of things that it's location driven that you have to think about. Whereas long-term rentals are more stability, meaning schools, safety for kids, proximity to transportation, or proximity to downtown Atlanta because that's where people work. So it's a different set of criteria that you're looking at before you even purchase the property.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stephanie G, when you're talking to an investor to look at the difference in the consideration between long-term and short-term rental, what are the things that you want them to think about, from location to maintenance and so on, for them to understand the differences and what would be a better fit for them and their pocketbook and their lifestyle?
I would really just kind of ask about the management. Just how hands off do you want to be with this? What really are you looking for out of it? Do you want, because with short term rentals, you can rent out a property and make like a whole month's worth of rent in 1 week for a long term rental that somebody, a family is staying in or a tenant is staying in. So whether it's also kind of riskier, I would personally think, going the short-term rental route if you're, if that's where you want to go, because you could there's the potential for more vacancies. So I think making sure that they have a clear understanding up front is, the pros and cons of both. I think there are pros and cons of anything in real estate. So that's kind of what I try to get to the bottom of, is just making sure that they understand, the advantages and the disadvantages of both types of properties. Now they're, great investments either way you look at it, but what is the long-term goal here? Are you wanting something that you'll hold on to for 10 to 20 years and let it appreciate? Are you wanting something more geared towards short-term rentals and, being at the lake or being in the mountain? Are you wanting a property for you to specifically go and visit yourself? Because long-term rentals, sure, you can put one at the lake, but it's the short-term rentals that bring in, a decent amount of money and can allow somebody to escape to that area to, I'm in Atlanta, let me go to Lake Hartwell or Lake Arrowhead or wherever. So it's kind of just getting an idea of what they personally want as far as the rental aspect goes, and, what they're looking to get out of it, money wise, but also what they want for their family or their future.
Yeah, and one thing you got to look into if you're advising a client on one of these properties, is some of them will allow rentals, but they are very specific, and they say they have to be 4 months or 5 month rentals. And
Yes.
so you got to be aware of that uh, information, because that might not suit somebody. You might not want to rent your property for 4 or 5 months, but there are communities that I know of that say you can rent, but it's got to be for a long term.
Yeah. There's also sometimes a specific certification that you have to have through your city or county that you live in that allows a short-term rental. I can't remember what it's called, but it's you have to have it certified through the county or the city that the house is in for it to be recognized and everything as a short-term, specifically as a short-term rental.
Right, right. So these are things that, we help guide people through, so that they're
Mhm.
not stuck with, oh man, I can't use this property. I want to rent it, but I got to rent it for 4 months.
Right.
And of course, it's like, for argument's sake, if you, they want to rent it at most people want to go there at the height of the season. Well, that might be when you want to use the property. So
Yeah.
all of these things come into play when you're advising somebody on what kind of rental property they're going to go with.
hmm
So,
Absolutely.
location is also a factor as well, because um, in determining in short-term rentals who you want to rent your property. If you say, what I would prefer is people who come in and out, they stay anywhere from a couple of days to, a couple of weeks. And they're not going to have wild parties, and they're not going to have a bunch of kids.
Right.
They're businessmen. And so you say, all right, if what I want is to be able to service the corporate crowd,
hmm
then what are the locations that I need to be looking at where I can
Yeah.
find properties that are suitable and that are
Abs-
allowed, as Stephanie G said, to be able to actually affect those kinds of rentals, a couple of days to a couple of weeks, as opposed to annual rentals or longer term rentals. And so now you're determining who you want in your property, businessmen, as opposed to, well, if I get a really great property up at the lake, I know that there are a couple of weeks every year that we're going to want to use it for ourselves, for the family. So that's off the calendar.
hmm
But the rest of the year, it can be open to, and having people that come in with kids and they have a good time and they stay for a week or 10 days, and they go back and they tell all their friends with kids about it, and they fill up our calendar.
Right.
So different locations for different types of rental business that you're looking for, and therefore different segments of income, because again, businessmen travel all through the year, but
Right.
families don't necessarily vacation or travel all through the year. And so
hmm
you have to match what the income is against the expense of maintaining the property, against the reality that a certain number of weeks a year you want to use it, and the reality that there will be a certain number of days or weeks each year in which the property will be vacant. So that when you do the math, you can look at it over a 12-month period and say, this is what the total revenue will be from rentals over a
hmm
number of weeks, and what the cost will be to clean it and have fresh towels in it, and keep the appliances in repair, and fix the hole in the wall that the last Goomba with the 6 kids punched in the wall, and so on, which is part of,
It happens.
happens.
Happens, right. Another thing too to think about, which, I mean, we did this, is corporate housing.
hmm
When we were transferred from Atlanta to, no, we went from Chicago to Atlanta. Um, we had corporate housing. We had an apartment in downtown Atlanta, because it took a couple of months to actually find the house that we ended up purchasing. So that's another avenue that you can think about which tends to be, longer term than, Airbnb kind of thing. We were there for at least 3 months, I think.
Yeah, we were.
And
So-
Atlanta's become very, very much a city that people want to come to and work in. So that's another avenue that you can think about. There's lots of different ways that we have to educate the clients to think about this stuff before we take them out and start. They just come in and say they want to get rental property, but they don't, we have to educate them on the whole spectrum of what rental property actually is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Stephanie, how many people do we talk to, who they bought a property a year ago, and at the end of the first year, they're disgusted with all of this, and now they want to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And they want $1 billion for it, but of course
Yeah.
you can't get it because you've got a mortgage, you've got all these costs, and they have difficulty selling the property, and now they're stuck with it and they're frustrated. Those people are folks that did not have a team working with them, people that have the experience and can ask the questions and can help the investor or the new investor hold their feet to the fire to really make the decision about what type of investment is going to be the best one for them, their pocketbook, their time, and their long-term goals.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think about it. For people who just want to get in and out, there's this third tier, which Stephanie M and I engaged in for a number of years, which is buying a property that needs a good deal of work. It's commonly called fix and flip properties,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and get those properties all spruced up, buy them at an inexpensive enough price, make sure that you budgeted correctly for the repairs that it's going to need so that you can then sell it to somebody who wants to buy it to live in it, and they can move right in and there is not grief.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Those take, careful scrutiny in the property and understanding how to get the property at a price that allows for the cost of the renovations
Mm-hmm.
and has enough of a profit margin, including all expenses, commissions, and interest on the loan that you took to buy the property, and so on. All of those costs, so that you walk away as an investor with a specific percentage as your profit.
Right. And you're
Mhm.
also holding the property for longer because depending
Mhm.
upon how long it takes to redo the property,
Right.
Is it just a coat of paint or, is it a tear, are you tearing everything out? So you've got to figure out the cost of holding that property.
For sure.
Yeah. And we do this two ways. We help investors buy properties like that. And we also sell properties like that. We sell them as the fixers,
Right.
and we sell them as the flippers. You just had a property not too long ago in which we listed that property. It was a fixer-upper. Wasn't a total wreck, but it was a fixer-upper. We priced it correctly. And how long did it take you to sell that house?
I'm pretty sure less than 24 hours.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still getting calls.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's because as a fixer-upper, you were able to advise the seller
Right.
on what the value of the property was and how to satisfy their needs, which was to sell it as quickly as possible, but not get ripped off.
Correct.
And yet it was a good value for the buyer that purchased it. Tell us a little bit about how that particular property kind of started out and worked out, that you were able to get sold in a day.
I mean, with having conversations with sellers that your property isn't worth $1 million is not always an easy conversation to have. But I do think in this situation that the seller really appreciated my honesty, and my knowledge about the fixing and flipping side of real estate, because I know about it. I understand the logistics of it. So I think me having the background knowledge of knowing what investors look for and how they price properties, that gave me a huge advantage walking into that appointment, and that listing, and having just a really honest conversation with the seller. And I think honestly, data and facts helped that conversation more than anything than me just guessing. So the property was, I definitely priced it to be pretty, essentially, for an investor to even want to take a look at or even touch with a 10-foot pole. And because I priced it appropriately, and the seller knew the circumstances around the property and knew that it wasn't, a complete move-in ready home, she understood essentially. And I, didn't sugarcoat it. I came in there with facts, and priced it accordingly, and then 24 hours, we were done.
And that was a great advantage to the seller because then they were able to get done with the sale of the home.
Correct.
They did ultimately receive, a price that worked for them. It wasn't as
Mhm.
if they were being beaten up,
Right.
and it really symbolizes what is the key part of acquiring a property like that. When you think about it, your money is really made. Your profit is made when you're
Mhm.
buying the property, not when you're selling it. Because if you pay too much for the property and the property needs much more work than you were assuming it needed, then when you go and try and sell the property, in order for you to recover all of the money that you invested in it, you find you can't sell the home because it's overpriced, no matter
Right.
how nice it is. So, um, the thinking as the investor, the buyer, is to really understand what the price needs to be on that particular home.
Mhm.
Because then, excuse me, if the home needs $50,000 worth of rehab work and it takes you 7 weeks to do that, and you're paying interest on your acquisition loan for 7 weeks, and you're paying all of the contractors to do the work, and now you're getting the house prepared for sale, and there's insurance and there's taxes and all the things that come to play while you're owning it, you have to sell it correctly and pretty quickly in order to
Mhm.
be able to make up the cost out of pocket that you put in for that short-term basis.
Yep.
So there's business planning as well as there's the fix-up part. And it all starts with diagnosing the property correctly and acquiring it at the correct price.
Mhm.
So versus helping the seller to understand, because
Mhm.
they were not going to fix the property up, and so therefore it was an investor sale. The seller understanding the buyer and how the investor thinks, that helped you gauge what the house should be priced at, and the seller agreed. But do the reverse. Talk about when you're working with a buyer that is purchasing an investment property. What is it, Stephanie or Stephanie, or both? Um, what is it that you want them to understand and put down on paper so that they're just not buying a property because look at this neighborhood, this is so terrific, and they overpay for the property and they have to underinvest in fixing the property and they can't sell the darn thing at the end.
I think just them knowing all of the amounts that need to be figured in to make sure that they acquire the property or they buy the property at the proper price so that they don't lose on the flip, of the deal. Like you said, there are a lot of costs associated with purchasing a fix and flip type property. You not only have the price of acquiring the property or buying the property, you have the renovation costs, the holding costs, the I mean, just there's so much. The real estate commission, the closing costs, like all of that needs to be figured into it. So that's what I talk to a buyer about. And typically, if it's a first time flipper, I try to get pretty in depth with them. A lot of the investors that I've worked with are, seasoned investors, so they know exactly where they need to be at price wise in order for them to acquire a property. But I want to make sure that they know all the costs associated with purchasing a fix and flip type property. And probably the most important aspect of these numbers is, what's their profit going to be? What's the estimated profit? What's the estimated price that the property can sell for? And so it's, they heavily rely on me to make sure that I'm giving them facts and data about the market, so that whatever price that they get this property at, they have a good cushion to make sure that they make their profit back.
They have to have a good team around them too, because
Correct.
the budget is critical. It's
Mhm.
just like building a new home. If
Mhm.
if the price of lumber goes up
Right.
and you haven't accounted for it in an overage budget, and I'll tell you a little story. This is a number of years ago, so the numbers would be different than today. Today's numbers would be even higher. But when we were building new construction homes in North Carolina, ordering the construction package and at the price was critical. And having, we had a big warehouse in which we kept lots and lots of various sizes and types of the wood timbers necessary to frame the home.
Mhm.
And so if we were estimating that we were buying the framing package for $9 per, we call it stick, $9 per 2x6 by 10 to frame the walls, the exterior, the roof, etc. And our budget called for $9 per piece of wood. And we needed, let's say, 585 pieces of wood that would be cut and trimmed in various sizes. That plus tax plus delivery was what the cost of materials were.
Mhm.
Well, oops, there's a hurricane that hits part of the country where our wood is coming from. And all of a sudden, there's a shortage of wood. Or all of the 4x12 by half inch or 3/4 inch flooring or wall framing siding wood is $18 a sheet. And now, because of the hurricane in Florida, all of that wood is being shipped to Florida to board up all the windows and doors so the houses don't blow away. And instead of me paying $18 a sheet, I'm paying $28 a sheet. There goes my budget.
Mhm.
So knowing and planning, having a really, really good team around you that knows how to plan how much time it takes to do certain tasks to be able to get that house remodeled and prepared for sale, what the cost of materials are, and also what the cost will be for permits and the time it takes to get permits done, and then for the homes inspected once they're permitted. And all of that has a dollars and cents factor that has to be adhered to in a budget. And you have to really have somebody who can control that budget. Otherwise, there goes your profit.
And the other thing too is, like, if you're holding a property for a long time, if you buy a fix and flip and it's very extensive and you're holding it for a long time and the market changes and the market goes down and the market doesn't go up, well, there goes your profit with that. So, there's a lot, I think that there's a lot more that you gotta think about in a fix and flip, if it's an extensive fix, then if you're buying, like we talked about earlier, a property that, maybe needs a coat of paint, and you can turn it into short-term rental or a long-term rental. A fix and flip is a lot more that can go right and or go wrong.
Yeah. I think specifically, I mean, just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying is with rentals, specifically like long-term rentals, those are very, if the property is not in great condition, all it takes is a little bit of paint and carpet to get it to a certain standard for it to meet market rent. It doesn't have to have the fancy countertops and stuff like that.
Right.
I feel like the market is very much, looked at, what rent can you get off of a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, instead of it being what can you get out of a house that has granite countertops, a renovated bathroom, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at rental properties, the upfront cost that you have to put into it most of the time is very minimal compared to buying a property that you plan to fix and flip. Sometimes flips are very minimal. We call it lipstick on a pig. You just go in and do paint and carpet and call it a day. But then sometimes there are properties where it's been fire damaged. So you have to kind of restart sometimes, or it needs a roof, and understanding the mechanicals in the property. How old is the roof, the HVAC, stuff like that. There's so much that goes into flipping a property that has much more cost associated with it than a long-term rental. So I think that's something people need to, people who are wanting to get into flipping or having investment properties need to understand as well, the cost differences in acquiring these properties.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I think for a first-time investor, somebody who says, I want to use real estate to build wealth, I think that there's less uncertainty and scariness if you do what we were just talking about than if you went into a fix and flip.
Yeah.
It's just this less that you have to worry about.
Yeah, there are a lot of different strategies. One of the biggest one that I've heard of is called the BRRRR method. You buy, renovate, rent, and refinance. And you can literally rinse and repeat that. And I've seen so many investors do that. And that's how they've grown their rental portfolio to then kind of get out of that space and go into fixing and flipping, or having the short-term rentals for the Airbnbs and stuff like that. That's what I've seen a lot of people get into, is how they get into real estate investing is utilizing that BRRRR method.
Say that again. What is it? Buy,
renovate, rent, and refinance.
That's a good one.
Those and a lot more.
Yes.
What needs to be thought about and understood. And this shouldn't frighten you off if you haven't yet begun to invest in real estate, because any of these categories and subsets in these categories are things that everybody can do, as long as when you begin to build your plan and you build a team around you to help you become successful at doing it. Even buying your very first buy and hold long-term rental property, you have to have a really good team to help you understand what the plan should be, what the costs will be, how to manage it, how it fits into your current working and family lifestyle in terms of time and effort, and what you want your long-term goals to be. And then you can make choices. So with these three kinds of investments, and we haven't talked about commercial investment, and we haven't talked about land investment. There's so many different ways to be able to use real estate to invest. But these are three key things that many people can do that are, in terms of having near-term, mid-term, and long-term profitability, good investment strategies to do. So let's sum up. I'm Ira, the new real estate investor, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best way for me to do this, and how is it going to get done, and what do I need to think about? Stephanie, summarize we've walked into the office, we sat down together for the first time, and I said the words investor. And now you're going to help me to get started to think through how do we summarize what we would help people to get done?
Go ahead.
Step one, pick your strategy. How do you want to start this new investment, venture that you're going on? Do you want to go long-term rental, short-term rental, or do you have the guts to go into fix and flipping? So I think that's absolutely step one, is understanding and knowing your strategy.
Yep.
Okay. So now you know your strategy. Now what do you do?
Well, now you look at their finances.
That's right.
You look at their finances and see what's going to work the best, considering the strategy that they want to take. Do they have the money to do a fix and flip?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the next thing is money. Let's look at your money and see what works best for you.
Yep.
And then when you look at money, you look at the short-term value of money and the long-term value of money to see which is going to be more important.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. You're doing this because this is how you make a living. You buy, you fix, you flip, and you do it 7, 8, 10 times a year. You make a couple $100,000 a year, and that's your job.
Mm-hmm.
Or you go to work every day. You have a career, but among the different ways in which you want to grow your money for college for your kids, for a comfortable retirement when you come to the decision that going to work every day is no longer what you have an interest in.
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of things, you determine what is the short-term and long-term value of money, and how does acquiring it using real estate, which is not all work, it can be fun. As a matter of fact, a lot of times it is fun and sometimes pretty exciting to be able to use to build stability and to be able to build wealth. And that's something that when you have a really good team around you, when you have Stephanie helping you to understand and make the decisions about the best ways to be able to get into investing, and then as you do this, helping you to continue to find the kinds of properties with the kinds of payoff that work for you, and Stephanie's ability to bring a team. Got a home warranty company that'll get the home warranty on so that if your heat and air system breaks, it'll get paid for. And we have a list of contractors so that if you've got a short-term rental and, as I said, some goomba punches a hole in the wall, you can have somebody in there in a day to patch the wall, paint the wall, and nobody knows that there's ever been a hole in the wall, and so on. Good lenders to help you to finance it. So you say, Stephanie G, come and help me. And Stephanie G says, yes, I will, along with my team, to help you to execute your plan.
Absolutely. And I'll wiggle my eyebrows and do a happy dance.
There you go. There you go. So that's kind of a real estate investing 101 primer in the ideas behind it and how to think through what is going to be in the world of real estate investing, which everybody should be thinking about, and as many folks as possible should be engaging in. Those are the places, those are the starting points.
It's like that old saying, you can't go wrong with owning dirt.
That is true.
You can't go wrong in owning dirt. And that's just an old time saying.
Because there's only so much of it, and there ain't going to be no more.
That's right.
That's right.
So while you're thinking about owning dirt, you also may be thinking about picking apples.
That's right.
So Stephanie M., give us a quick summary of all the cool things you talked about as we head towards the end of this podcast today.
Okay, so first I was up in Blue Ridge and I was on the railroad, the scenic railroad. Go check it out. Take a ride in the fall, the Blue Ridge Scenic Railroad. And while you're up in that neck of the woods in Blue Ridge, Go pick some apples. There's like a whole bunch of orchards up there. Go find one that you like. Pick some apples. Go on a waterfall hike. There's a whole bunch of those up there. And then while you're up there, stay up there and go over to Amicalola Falls State Park and stay in the lodge, stay in a yurt, stay in a cabin. There's just tons of stuff to do up there. You know, think about it for the fall break that's coming up for the kids. I mean, a couple of days up there and you can have a blast. So that was the first thing I talked about. Second thing I talked about is going on this weekend, and that's in Stone Mountain, and that is Yellow Daisy Fair, Arts and Craft Festival. It's been around forever, 400 plus artists, food, music, art. It's great. It's you only pay to get into the Stone Mountain Park, and that's it. And bring a lot of water because if it's hot, it's hot. And then this is going on the whole month of September. This is a great thing. I told you all the must-see attractions in Atlanta, like the aquarium, the Lego Discovery Center, the Fernbank Museum of Natural History. All of those places that we Coca-Cola, that we think about are fun places to take the kids, are free for the kids in September. So this is all September from now until the end of September. Get online, check it out, get your tickets online. Also get your tickets online for that railroad because, like I said, there are different kind of cars that you can get in, and they're booked. And especially in the fall season when the leaves are changing, they get booked up. So make sure you make your reservations before you go. And that's what I had for you today.
So the last thing you want to do is, if you really are thinking about investing in real estate, or if you've been investing in real estate and you really want to mature your investment plan and you want to build a really good program near term and long term, call us. Call us, call Stephanie G. Talk to the folks on our team, and let's help you build a plan that you may not initiate for 6 months or a year, but you now have the makings of what you need to do to be prepared to be able to really have a good, consistent, profitable strategy for buying and then selling investment real estate properties to the benefit of your portfolio. So, given all of that, I want to thank you all for joining us this week. I think it's been an interesting conversation and something that I know, if you give it some thought and you want to learn more, will be very profitable for you. I want to thank Stephanie G for being with us again today, and Stephanie M for being with us. And if you like what you heard, well, okay, click on the like. And if this is the first time you're joining us, or if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel, because this and a whole bunch of other really good and interesting and fun and important pieces of information and stories about real estate are on that channel. And I think it's something that would be very valuable. And if you know anybody that's interested in learning more, tell them to jump on and subscribe to the channel, because I think this will be good for them as well. So I want to thank you for joining us. I'm Ira Miskin with your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. For Stephanie Miskin and for Stephanie Gulley, I want to wish you guys a great week, and we look forward to seeing you again next time on ATL Home and Market.
Bye.
Bye.